Hi, I'm Beth from Sew Country, and today I sewed up the Odyssey mini tote. This is a collaboration between Needle and Anchor and Jumping Mouse, and this pattern really blew me away. It is so well written and so unique. I really just enjoy how it looks. I just want to keep looking at it, and it challenged me too, a couple ways to think differently. Great pattern. A couple things I want to note is that I do some things differently in this tutorial. So please follow the pattern and you'll get a much better bag, of course. Anything I say that is different than the pattern's always right. The pattern goes through a lot of testing, and I just watched my video one time to try to edit out any mistakes. So follow the pattern. And one other thing that I definitely did wrong is the handles. I say in the pattern to cut 2, and that was a complete mistake on mine. I thought we cut the 2 straps into 2 to get the 4 handles, but no, you need to cut out 4 of these handles so that you can have the really pretty unique handles that she has in the pictures and the way the pattern's written. So make sure you don't follow my mistake there. I just ran out of vinyl at the end and couldn't cut anymore. So anyway, wonderful pattern. I hope you enjoyed my tutorial. If you have any questions or you're unclear on anything I did, just comment below and I'll try to explain it. And I hope you have a great time sewing this, and thank you so much for watching. The first thing I want to do is I just want to kind of go over the fabric requirements and the hardware requirements. For me, I'm going to do this bag with a thinner type of vinyl on the outside, and I'll probably do a waterproof canvas on the inside. Because I'm using a vinyl and a waterproof canvas, I will not need to use any woven interfacing, but I will need to use some firmer interfacing for certain parts of the bag, which I will go over as we get to it. This bag does not require a lot of hardware. We do need a zipper, we do need some D-rings or O-rings. We can use rivets and purse feet and zipper ends if you want to, but you do not need to use a purse feet or zipper ends if you don't have those. Those are optional. The cutting chart broken down really nicely. On this cutting chart, she's going to tell us that the cutting list here that is in purple, these are going to be the pattern pieces that you will need to mirror. The first thing we do is we have the list of all the names and a letter for each pattern piece. Then we have the dimensions. Then it tells you the exterior. So for exterior panel A, we're going to cut out 2 pieces. One, of course, is going to be mirrored. It tells you that if you're using a cotton woven, to go ahead and use woven interfacing also. Then here's the part where for the lining. We're not going to need a lining for these 2 pieces, but if we come down to C and D, we'll see that we need lining for those. And then it will tell you if you need Decaville Light or Peltex or Decaville Heavy. So it will have it in this column right here if you need to cut out those also. So let's go ahead and get started and jump right into working on this bag. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the bottom, the base. And on the back, she tells us to go ahead and attach a heavy interfacing. I'm using Decaville Heavy. She gives us the measurements and tells us that we are going to have this interfacing fused a 1/2 inch in from all sides. Also, what I've done is I've made my 4 quarter markings using the pattern piece, and I also use that same pattern to draw my purse feet. She tells us to go ahead and stitch around with a 1 inch seam allowance to this base. Now in the pattern she does tell us to make sure not to back stitch and to just pull those threads and tie them off. It does make a much neater and better looking bag. I'm just going to back stitch though. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to attach my purse feet, and I am just going to use a really cheap purse foot. It's just got the prongs that I will open once I get it in there. So what I do is I take my seam ripper and I'm just going to make a tiny cut right there at that mark. I'm just going to push that in, and then I'm just going to open that prong flatten that out. Now you can take this and put a piece of Decaville or masking tape over the bottom of this so that it won't rub or come through or cause any problems if you feel uncomfortable with that. I'm going to go ahead and do this same process for the rest of these purse feet on this bag. Now I got my purse feet on the bag base and the stabilizer attached, so I'm going to set this aside and we are going to start working now on the zipper. Okay, this is going to be the zipper for the main opening of the bag. So I pulled out my zipper, it is 16 inches, and I pulled out my 2 zipper panel pieces. So what I'm going to do on the short side, the short edge of each piece, so 4 in total, I'm going to draw a 1-inch line. Now what I'm going to do is I want to fold this raw edge down to meet that 1-inch line. I am going to choose to use glue on mine to secure that in place, but you could also use double-sided tape. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on each one and I'm going to clip it in place so that it is secure on each short edge. Now that I have each short edge folded under to that 1-inch line, I'm going to set these aside and let that glue dry and we'll start working on the zipper. So for that 16-inch piece of zipper tape, I'm going to go to one end and I'm going to make a line about 5/8 or 1/2 inch down. And then what I'm going to do is I want to make my zipper end with a 90-degree angle. So I'm going to separate my tape and I'm just going to pinch right at that line and push my teeth down to meet. That is going to create that 90-degree angle. Now I'm going to go ahead and put a clip right here while I get the other one pinched down as well. And then, so you can see they look about even. That's a 90-degree angle. Now whenever I sew this, and you could also, sometimes I will even just glue that down to kind of help it to stay so it's easier to sew. But what I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to sew it and feed it through my sewing machine upside down. And so I'm going to stitch right along here, and when I'm stitching, I'm going to be using my stiletto to keep my zipper teeth pushed straight. So after I do this side, I'm going to break my stitches and then come over and feed my tape through the machine that same way downward. If I started and fed the teeth through this way, I feel like it would be harder for me to keep that shape and it would shift easier. So this way gives me a little bit more control. And now I'm going to install my zipper pull. Now that we have our zipper prepped, we're going to go ahead and take out our 2 zipper panels that we have short ends under to that 1-inch mark. I'm going to fold it in half now and make a mark on the centers. Now you can do this by either clipping your centers or using an ink pen, whichever you want, but whatever you do, you want to keep it in the seam allowance. After you do that, then what you're going to do is you're going to measure 1/4 inch away from that center mark and make a little mark there inside the seam allowance again, and this is going to be where we're going to start placing our zipper. So we're going to place our zipper right side up against our exterior right side up. And so our teeth are just going to be right there at that 1/4 inch mark you just made. We're going to clip it. And then what we're going to do, after we have that clipped, we're just going to bring the edges together and make them match. So we're encasing our zipper tape in this zipper panel. So now we have a little zipper sandwich in there, and then I'm just going to do my 1/4 inch seam allowance all along to the bottom of the zipper panel here. Now that I have that sewn, I'm just going to open it up and pull out my zipper. I'm going to poke out that corner just a little bit, make sure it's nice and crisp. Match up my edges there, and I'm going to put a little clip here. So we're going to top stitch down this side all the way down. Then we're going to baste all the other edges. We're going to take the last zipper panel and do the same thing we just did. First, we're going to mark the centers. We'll open it up, and then I'm going to make a mark 1/4 of an inch away from that center mark. And that is where I'll put my zipper teeth. I'm going to fold it. Let me go ahead and make some clips in there. Now that I put the teeth there at that 1/4 inch mark away from the center, I'm going to fold this down, encasing the zipper tape, match up the bottoms, and clip it together. I will then sew it again at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So what I did is I went ahead and pulled these apart because I was getting a little bit of a problems clipping the two together. This was creating a bump and it wasn't letting me get as close as I needed to. So for me it is working better to separate the two and then clip. So now what I'm going to do, now that I have that clipped, I'm going to sew along that edge, the raw edge, with the zipper tape sandwich in between at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, I'm going to push these apart, push out that edge, and clip. And once again, I'm going to top stitch right along the zipper tape, and then I'm going to baste on the other side, so this is one unit. Now in the pattern, she does say that after you make your 1/4 inch mark on your zipper panel, that you can apply a line of double-sided tape and attach your zipper that way, and then even put more double-sided tape on the top to make everything secure, and so you have a better time sewing without any shifting. Now that we have our zipper panel ready, the last thing I'll do is I want to finish the end of the zipper so that the pull cannot come off. Now you can do this a couple ways. You can install a zipper end, or you can do what I'm going to do. And I just cut an extra piece of vinyl, and she does have a file for this with the pattern. He explained how to finish the zipper, but I'm just going to do it a simple way. Since I'm using vinyl, I do not have to worry about the raw edges, and I'm just going to clip that over and just top stitch across here, and then I'll trim up the ends whenever I'm done. She does tell us in the pattern about how long your zipper panel should measure once you've completed this step. I'm not going to give those measurements just for integrity of the pattern, but do check your pattern to make sure you're about, you're pretty close to that. Now that I have this complete, I'm going to set this part aside. So now we're going to be working on the bag handle, which is S, the bag handle cuff, which is T, and the bag handle connector, which is U. So here is your bag handle S. Okay, what you do after you cut it is you make a line down the center all the way down. Okay, when you do that, you can apply double-sided tape, glue, or just use clips, whichever is your preference, but you're going to fold the long raw edges all the way down to the center line on both sides. Once you do that, you're going to fold it again. You're basically making that double fold bias tape. You're going to sew down both sides of your strap. This is what your strap will look like. Okay, so that is our strap. We'll put that aside. You will have two of these. For our bag handle cuff T and our bag handle connector U, these are all the same size, but it's just they're orientated differently. So if you are using a directional fabric, you'll want to pay attention to your measurements. But what you'll do is you'll cut out 4 of each, so 8 in total, and you're just going to draw that same line down the middle. But the different step with this is once you fold your raw edges in to the middle, you do not fold them again. You will just leave those raw edges on the inside, but you can see I stitched down both sides. On the connector, she does tell us, and the cuff as well, she does tell us that we can put a piece of Decaville Light. I didn't feel I needed that with mine because mine are kind of thick already. And so that is the handle, the cuff, and the strap connector. So now we're going to be looking at our exterior panel A, both the regular one and the mirrored piece, and then also our exterior pocket lining C. So I had the non-mirrored attached to the non-mirrored exterior panel, and then I have the mirrored panel with the mirrored lining. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how these are orientated and how we're going to sew them. I'm going to hold it up to the camera so you can see it a little better, or at least I'm going to try. There is the notch that you cut out right here in your exterior panel. That is in your pattern piece. You're going to line up the edge of your pocket lining C. These are going to be right sides together. You can see there's a little notch there that kind of fits right there. And then the top edge just goes all along the top. And you can see it fits even right here. And then there's that cut on the end. So this is how it looks. I hope you can see that okay without the glare. And what we're going to do is we're just going to sew along this top edge at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. We're going to do this on both pieces. For this side, we're going to line it up the exact same way, just mirrored. So instead of sloping downward to the left, to the right, this one will be sloping downward to the left. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and sew these now. So now that I have these sewn together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, the pattern tells me that I can trim down this top edge of the lining. It does not say to trim down the top edge of your exterior panel, so I'm just trimming down my lining. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over and roll that seam down and a little bit of my lining down. So let's go ahead and do that now and put a clip there. I just want to see my exterior from the front. I do not want my lining poking through. So I'm just using my fingers to roll that back and clip it. This is why you have the cutout, so that can roll down easily while leaving the other portion upright. Now that I have that rolled down, I'm just going to top stitch across that folded edge. I want to repeat the same steps with the mirrored version of the exterior panel. Now that we have both of these done, I'm going to set them aside. Okay, so now we are going to work on pieces B and D. First thing we want to do is we want to lay down our pocket pieces D so that they are right side up. Your lining's right side up, and then your B pieces are going to be right sides down, so they're going to be right sides together. You're going to put your mirrored pieces together and your non-mirrored pieces together. You're going to line up that straight diagonal line to match the tops. This is where we're going to sew. You can see here that my rounded curve is more towards the middle, and this short, sharp curve is on this one right here, lined up at the top left. And on the mirrored version, that short side is at the top right. What we're going to do with these pieces now is we're going to sew 3/8 of an inch along the top of both of those diagonal sides. So here's my first one sewn together with that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip them over and open up this seam. I'm going to flatten that seam. This is called butterflying your seam. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it back over, and I am going to top stitch on each piece. I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away on the exterior. I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away on the lining also. And I'm going to keep that seam open so my stitching catches both seam allowance. Now I'm going to repeat these same steps for the other piece. So now you can see that is forming a straight line there and then a straight line here. So now that we have this piece done, we're going to put these together with our exterior panels. So now we're going to pull out that exterior panel we worked on earlier and the Peekaboo panel we just finished up. Now in the pattern it tells you that you can use the dots on both the exterior panel and the Peekaboo panel pattern pieces to make the matchup a little bit easier, and that did work for me, but I'll tell you a different way that I did mine, just so you can have two different options to do. What I did was I flipped this over and I matched up my pocket pieces and I went ahead and clipped them. So here's my pocket pieces. I have them right sides together, and that means that when you look at the front of it, you can see that my Peekaboo piece is sticking out the right way. Then what I did was I took this piece after I clipped those pocket pieces together, matching them up. Then I took this over to my cutting mat. I went ahead and lined up my bottom to make sure it was straight. And then I looked at my sides. I looked at these top pieces to make sure they were on the same line. And all of that fit perfectly for me when I did it that way. So that was the easier way for me to do it. So you have two options. You can use the purple dots in your pattern to mark it and then check it against the grid. Or you can do like me and line up your pocket pieces and clip them together and then try against the grid. Always do the grid to make sure, because sometimes our eyes will think something is straight and it's not. So I did that on both of mine and it worked out great. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to stitch my pocket closed. So you can see we're going to go all the way up here and stitch all the way around at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance to close up this pocket so that it is a fully functional pocket here from our front. So that is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to lay it down like this and I'm going to pull this back and stitch around here at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now I have my pocket closed, and at this point in the pattern she tells you if you want to add the stabilizer to this front, you can go ahead and do so now. Now I'm going to go ahead and repeat this same process to close up the pocket in my other side, and that will complete that. So now we're going to sew up our side pocket for the back. So pull out your side pocket pieces, both the exterior and your lining. Go ahead and clip those along the top, right sides together. We're going to sew this with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then you can use pinking shears or regular scissors and just make clips to have notches in there so this will turn on that sharp curve easier. Also pull out your side panel piece, because this is what we will attach our side pocket to. So let's go ahead and sew 3/8 of an inch seam allowance there at the top of your two pocket pieces. Now let's go ahead and trim this down. Either use your pinking shears or make notches after you trim the seam allowance. Now we're going to turn it right sides out. I'm going to go ahead and just match up my bottoms first and then poke out the top for just ease. And I'll put some clips here in the top so that we know, the fabric knows how I want it to lay. Now I'm going to top stitch along this curved edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I am not basting around just yet though. Now I'm going to take this and match up just the bottom edge, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip up my exterior and I'm going to sew the lining of the pocket to the side panel at 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. Then I'm going to trim that seam allowance down just on the lining to make sure I have a little bit less bulk whenever I'm attaching this to the bag. There's my 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. I am just going to trim the lining seam allowance. Do not trim your side panel. So just flip it back and trim that. Go ahead and pull your exterior down and you're going to match up all the edges. This is a pocket where the it bows out, so you will have to match up your sides. Now I'm just going to stitch around the sides and get everything basted together with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And just make sure you repeat that for your second one so you have both of your side pockets completed. So now it's time to complete the exterior. So pull out your side panels, both of your side panels and both of your exteriors. And what we're going to do is we're just going to clip a side panel to an exterior panel. We're going to clip them right sides together. The thing we want to pay attention to are those, let me show you right here. Okay, on this side seam, you can see where that top stitching is there. We just want it to connect nicely to the side stitching, this top stitching we've already done on our exterior panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip that area first. So we're going to sew every one of these together at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm going to do the first one and then I'll probably skip the others. Continue on. Now what the pattern says is that our seam allowance needs to be pushed to the exterior. Now she says using double-sided tape. I really want to top stitch this, but I'm afraid it's too bulky right here with this and I don't think my sewing machine will look nice. So I am going to not top stitch and just use the double-sided tape. So I'm going to flip it over, apply a layer of double-sided tape and just push that seam down against the exterior. So I'm going to attach this exterior panel to the free side of this side panel, just like we did before. I'm going to try to make that top stitching right here line up with the top stitching right here. Again, I'm going to sew at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then I will push my seam to the exterior once again and use double-sided tape. I'm going to do that with all the side pieces, all the exteriors, until I create a tube and have the exterior all sewn together. So I sewed all the side panels and the exterior panels together with that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I also used the double-sided tape to push the seams down to the exterior side. So I have my bag, the exterior, completed. I can tell that it's a little slouchy, but I'm actually okay, and I think I'm going to leave it this way. So I do not think I'm adding any stabilizer to the exterior. So the next step is to attach the base to the bag. So I already have my quarter markings on my base, and then I did markings on my bag. So on the bottom, I put a mark halfway here, a center mark here, center mark here, and one here. I matched those up first, and then I just clipped around, right sides together. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and stitch 1/8 of an inch around this base. That will allow us to, it's kind of like hand stitching. So if you're someone who likes to hand stitch, you could do that. The staples, whatever you want to do. But I'm just going to do 1/8 of an inch all the way around. That'll let me remove the clips. And then I'm going to come back and do another row of stitches. Now that row of stitches is going to be around 3/8 of an inch. I don't want to sew right up against my stabilizer, this Decaville Heavy. I want to sew about 1/8 of an inch away all the way around the bag. So 2 rows of stitches. So I'm going to start that now. Okay, so I have that basting stitch 1/8 of an inch away completed. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew, since I've got that stabilized everything, I'm going to flip the bag over and sew this way so I can watch my stitches in relation to that stabilizer. Like I said, I want to be about 1/8 of an inch away and do it that way. So now, let's see, I will probably do just a little bit over 1/4 of an inch. Looks like it's going to be a good seam allowance for me. So now I'm going to trim my seam allowance down to about 1/4 of an inch. If you want, you can notch the edges around the corners to make sure that those turn out easily. So I am done with my exterior. I'm going to set this aside for right now and start working on my interior. For my interior, I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I'm not going to follow the pattern, so feel free to follow the pattern if you want, but I'm just going to make a simple slip pocket by sewing just a piece of fabric that I cut together and folded it right sides together. I'm just going to do a quick sew around here, leave an opening and turn that out. Then I'm also going to just do the pocket piece, a zipper pocket, kind of simple too. I used the cutout that is given in the pattern, and so I'm just going to stitch first around the exterior, and then I'm going to cut out the interior, and then we'll go from there after that. I'm going to take my slip pocket over to the ironing board and iron it out really nicely and get it pressed flat. I'm going to go ahead and stitch 1/8 of an inch around this zipper overlay to attach it to the lining piece. Now that I have this zipper overlay attached to my lining on the exterior, what I'm going to do now is I am going to cut out the interior portion so I can attach my zipper pocket. So now that I'm doing my lining a little bit differently, I'm not giving measurements for everything because I really didn't even measure things out. I just kind of rough cut and I'll trim it up as I go. So for the zipper, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I just cut a length of zipper and I made sure it was longer than the overlay. And I'm just going to attach this to the zipper lining. Repeat that for the second lining, matching up the sides and the top. Now I'm going to pull out my lining with the overlay attached. And I'm going to center the zipper tape through the lining, the overlay window. I'm going to make sure my zipper pull is in the middle. And I want my zipper closing to the left, so I'm going to make sure I have it oriented that way. Just put that right there. And take it over my machine, and then I'm just going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from that raw edge so that it catches the zipper tape, and I want to make sure that I have my teeth in the middle of my window. Now that I got that attached, I'm going to flip it over and trim everything up. I'm going to close up my zipper pocket completely. Now this does deviate from the pattern. The pattern has you doing one of the double birth. You birth once through the bottom of the bag and then you close up the lining and then you birth the rest of it through the zipper pocket. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to close it through the lining. I'm okay if you see that lining at the bottom of my bag, but if you don't like that, do follow the pattern and leave your zipper pocket open. Now I took my slip pocket that I made and I took it to the iron and ironed it, and then I folded it in half so I could have a little bit more of stability. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch along this top edge. I'm going to find my center on my lining just by making a crease. I'm going to find my center on my slip pocket again by finding a crease. We'll line those up there. And then I'm just going to top stitch around the 3 edges, leaving my top open, and then that will be completing my simple slip pocket in this bag. Okay, I have my slip pocket and my zipper pocket in my lining. So now it's time to get our strap connectors readied and sewn together. So what I'm going to do is we had 4 of these, and so I folded it in half and slid a 1-inch rectangular ring on each. I'm going to baste the bottoms of these just to help me whenever I'm putting everything together, but that isn't a necessary step, it's just to help for me. Okay, so now that I have the bottoms basted together, I'm going to use the paper pattern piece and attach these connectors to my lining top. Now for my lining top, I did go ahead and add a piece of Decaville Light to mine there, but there is a pattern piece for the stabilizer, so if you need it, add it. If not, that's fine. Use your pattern piece and mark where your D-ring connectors are going to go. On this, she does tell us that leave about 1/2 inch hanging below, and then we're not going to trim that after we base that down. As I'm going to use my mark, I've already made my mark, and I'm going to sew 1/8 inch away to attach these, and then I'm going to go back and add a rivet too. I have my first one attached. I'm going to go ahead and do the other 3. And so So I finished the lining top, put my rivets on place and everything, and now it's time to get everything put together in the lining. So I pulled out my zipper panel that we completed in the beginning, and let me get that out of the way. And I found the center of the zipper panel and the center of my lining, and I clipped it together. Now we want to keep our zipper panel right side up and our lining right side up. Just going to baste this zipper panel onto my lining, just at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now that I got that basted on, I'm going to do the exact same thing with the other lining piece. Match up those center marks, and then I'm just going to double check that the sides match up, but they definitely should. There shouldn't be any issues there. Okay, my sides look good. I'm going to sew this up an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now that I have my zipper panel attached to my lining, I'm going to take this now and I'm going to add the lining top. The lining top is the part that we have already attached our D-rings to. So we know we want it to go like this, so I'm just going to flip it down and line up all my edges. And then I'm going to sew this on with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now that we have that attached with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, I am going to make some cuts right here in the top of my bag along my connectors, where that connector is. This is just going to let the connector go, the seam allowance go down so that my connectors can go up. Where I am going to be able to push my D-ring connectors down and have my seam allowance going up. So that way when I top stitch, I catch this seam allowance here, and then I also keep my D-ring connectors going down so that they stay lift up at the top of the bag. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and top stitch along the lining top, making sure your connectors are up and your seam allowance is up except for the area where the D-rings are. I'm going to repeat the same step for the other side, and that will complete this top portion of the lining. So I went ahead and sewed on both of my top lining panels to my lining bottoms. Then I went ahead and put them right sides together and clipped the sides and the bottom. Now I'm going to do something a little bit differently than what the pattern says, so you can choose. But like I said earlier, I am not going to turn the bag twice. I am just going to turn the bag once through the bottom. If you want to turn it through the pocket, you can follow the pattern for that. Now I'm just going to sew down this side and back stitch both times. And then I'm going to sew a little bit at the bottom and back stitch both times and leave an opening here. And then sew on my other side the same way. Then I'm going to box my corners. So I'm going to sew everything at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to go ahead and box my corners. The way I do that is I just pull in the middle and get it to open up. And then I'm just going to nest the seams. And make sure everything's nice and straight. Put a clip there. And do that on both sides. I'm just going to sew across the bottom here at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I'm not for sure what the pattern says. It could be 3/8. I can't remember, but it won't be too much of a big deal at the bottom part. So now that I've got my lining sewed up, it is time to put the two pieces together. So I'm going to have my lining right sides out. I'm going to have my exterior wrong sides out. I am going to put the lining inside the exterior. Now I want to make sure that I have the bag oriented so that it's going to close on the side I want it to close on, and I think I want it on this way, I'm pretty sure. So I'm going to slide that in there, and then I'm just going to match up all my seams. Okay, now that I have this clipped all the way around the top, I'm going to go around the top of the bag 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now that I stitched around the top, I am not going to trim the seam allowances, but I'm going to make some small snips into the corners to kind of help those turn properly. I'm going to turn the bag through the bottom. Okay, so I have the bag turned inside out, or right sides out, and I've been fooling with the seam to get everything down the way it goes and it's supposed to go, and oh my gosh, I'm falling in love with this bag every minute that I get to look at it longer. So excited. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to top stitch all along this top edge. I'm going to start in the corner. And I know that's a bulky area to start in, so I'm going to start like right here's the bulkiest area, so I'm going to start a little bit away from it. But I don't want to start and stop my top stitching here in the middle. Top stitch this way, so I'll have my bag, the exterior laying against my bed, just because it's easier for me with my machine. So I top stitched around the perimeter of my bag, and then I went ahead and closed the opening in my lining at the bottom. I'm just now getting to the step where it's time to install my straps and realized that I made a big error. We were supposed to cut out 4 of these. What happened in my mind is I saw the measurement, which part of the measurement has a 2 in it, and so when I saw the 2, I just normally thought 2 straps. So I only cut 2 straps, and I used up the rest of my vine on those 2 straps. Now I could cut more straps in this material here, but I'm okay with it just being the 2 straps. I did want the 4. I thought it was so pretty, so I'm kind of mad at myself, but it is what it is. So if you want the 2 straps on each side, you need to cut out the 4 pieces. I'm going to put a note on that in the beginning of my video, but it is what it is. Mine will only have the 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to feed these through my rectangular ring, and then I'm just going to rivet them in place and put them that way. So I did mess up that part, but still I'm in love with this bag. This is a gorgeous bag. I love the colors that I chose for it. I love the way it looks. Could not be more pleased with the way this bag turned out. So I'm going to finish my straps. I'm going to take some pictures of this bag and just look at it. I think I'm just going to look at it. It turned out gorgeous. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for sewing with me. If you have any questions or concerns or issues, please post them in the comments, or you can find me on Facebook and I'll definitely explain it better, and hope that you have a great time sewing this bag also. Thank you.